So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gabriel US Delez together with Group 7, and today we are going to print information literacy resources worldwide. So, let's start the presentation. Now, I want you guys to observe what you can see from this picture. There are a lot of icons, right? Now, what I'm trying to say to you guys is that information in today's world has become so rampant. When you search something on Google, countless links pop up that you don't know even where to choose from. It's like we are drowning in a sea of information, and the only skill that can save us is information literacy. Information literacy is the skill to be able to locate the information that you need. So, what is information literacy? Just as from what I've said earlier, information literacy is the ability to know when an information is needed and then the ability to locate it. Next is to evaluate whether that information that you found is credible or it cannot be trusted. And the next is to be able to apply that information that we've found or to share it with other people. So that in its essence is information literacy. So what is information literacy resources? Now, I want you guys to imagine that you are on a path with two ways. But suddenly you forgot where you were supposed to go. But thankfully, you have a GPS. Now, that is what information literacy resources act as. It basically act as a map so that you will know how to navigate the digital space. It also act as your survival kit to be able to survive so that you won't be fooled in cruising through the internet. It basically act as if your guide so that you won't be fooled by many fake news on the internet. So that is what information literacy resources are. It helps us become a much more responsible digital citizen. So now that we know what information literacy and information literacy resources are, just take a look at some example of information literacy resources. So open educational resources. That is basically an online library or e-resources where you can scroll through many information online. Next is OPAC. If you've been to the if you've been to the library in USTP, I'm sure that you've come across the computer to search for a book that you specifically need. Online public access catalog, that is the application that you used. It basically helps us be able to locate that book faster so that we won't waste more time looking for that book. And this your toolkit for addressing misinformation. Just as the name suggests, it helps us be resilient and to be able to identify whether that information that we found is misinformation and how to combat it. So now the question is, could AI be considered an information literacy resources? How and why? Now, everybody knows the Flash, right? He can run millions of light speeds and he can travel anywhere in an instant. He is basically like light speed. But what if something that fast stumbles over a rock? Well, then he trips. Now, what I'm trying to say is this is very similar to AI. With just a single prompt to AI, information can be delivered to you instantly. Gone are the days where you have to go to the library to read books for many hours, right? Like you just type some words, and then the information that you need basically pops up. But here is the thing: AI it isn't always correct, you know. And when it trips on a rock, it basically hallucinates or it makes up information that isn't actually real. So, which is why we need to pair it up with critical thinking. I think critical thinking basically helps us to evaluate what the AI is saying to see whether if it is actually credible. It helps us use AI much more ethically, responsibly, and morally. So, which is why with great power comes great responsibility. Now, let's take a look at some countries with the best information literacy resources. Now, let's take a look. Finland. So, we already know that Finland is like the happiest country, right? So let's take a look at their credentials. From here, we can see IDI score ranking, or IDI also known as ICT Development Index. This basically measures a country's connectivity to Wi-Fi, how fast their computers, their technology is, basically just how advanced their digital infrastructure is. And in here, Finland ranks fourth, which is not an easy feat. Now, let's take a look at Media Literacy Index 2026. So, the context for this study is that it was located only in Europe. And it basically measures how a country's resilience to misinformation, their trust on the government, and many more, which helps them become media literate. And in here, Finland is ranked second. Now, let's take a look at an example of their information literacy resources. This is called Faktabari, or in English, Factbar. Just basically a website where you can fact check websites, but they've also evolved more to digital information literacy, which is they expanded not only on fact checking but also teaching others, such as AI guide for teachers, AI guide for students, and also media literacy tips for the Gen Z. Now, in here they also have a game where you can guess whether the AI is whether that picture is AI generated or real. And in here, I get 7 out of 10 correct. I suggest that you guys also play this because it is very fun to see how you can be fooled easily when looking at AI pictures. Now, how accessible are Finland's information literacy resources? Now, when I checked the website, it was also in English. So, which means that since there are so many people around the world that can speak English, we can have access to their information literacy resources, which can help us because they are so good and so experienced with it. And not only that, but they also have their native language in their websites, which can help their native citizens, especially those who do not speak English, because some countries only include English, which can cause problems for their native citizens that do not speak English. Next is physical and socio-economic accessibility. For them, information literacy isn't a luxury. They want everybody to be able to develop information literacy. So, in Finland, by law, libraries must allow free access to their computers and to their many more resources, so that those that cannot afford digital technologies can go to the library to learn more. So that is how advanced Finland is when it comes to their information literacy and their resources. Now let's take a look at Singapore. As from what I've said earlier, the IDI score ranking, which basically measures the digital infrastructure, Singapore is ranked first. It shows how advanced they are, and I think it is basically because of government project which is called Smart Nation 2.0, which pushes Singapore to become a digital country. They want to expand more their technology. And their PISA ranking in 2022, they ranked first in science, they ranked first in math, and they ranked first in reading, which shows how competent they are with their education and their students, which can be a great foundation for many more literacies, such as information literacy, of course. So, an example of their information literacy resources is called NLB, or National Library Board, which is basically an online library for their country. And they have different resources catered to different age groups, such as resources for teachers and students, resources for adults, and resources for seniors. And they also have this program which is called Sure, to develop discerning information for users. Source is first. You need to check if that source that you found is actually credible, and if their other post is actually believable. Understand what this post is trying to make you feel. Is this post biased? Is this post trying to make me angry? Next is research. Research other sources. Do not just stick to only one source, but also do lateral reading, which is to also check other sources to find whether what that source that you found is actually saying actually correlates with other websites. Next is evaluate. Evaluate to see if that source that you found is actually credible. That is when you can know that it is actually trusted. So that is the Sure program. to help their citizens. Now, how accessible are Singapore's information literacy resources? Let's take a look. First is their financial accessibility. So this is by their MDA, which is Infocom Media Development Authority. So basically, they have two schemes. First is they have mobile access for senior schemes and then digital access at home schemes. So first, let's tackle the mobile access for senior scheme. They basically offer subsidized data and also subsidized smartphones for seniors that cannot afford to go digital. Next is mobile access at home schemes where they offer subsidized laptops and tablets and also subsidized broadbands for families that cannot also afford to go digital so that they may do their work and other activities. Next is they have free internet access in public spaces. They have this thing called wireless at SG, which in some public spaces they have free Wi-Fi internet access. And in here, in some of their libraries, except for their library at Orchard, they basically have free access to e-resources. So that is how much Singapore is so advanced with their information literacy resources and their digital infrastructure. But now, let's take a look at the Philippines context. We cannot, as we can see, we are ranked 102. This is to be expected since our country isn't that advanced yet. But it shows that we are very far behind from the very ones at the top. Next is literacy rate. For our basic literacy rate is 90%, and then our functional literacy rate is 70.8%. So basically, what the difference between two is that basic information literacy is the ability to read and write a basic passage, be able to do basic math problems, while functional literacy rate encompasses the basic literacy but on a much more higher level, like also being able to read to information and then be able to be able to take something from it. Next is their Philippines Information Literacy Resources, which is called Out of the Box Media Literacy Initiative. Now, when I first checked the website, I've actually found that they were the first prize awardee for the 2021 UNESCO Global Media and Information Literacy Awards. I was very shocked that our country was actually able to get this award. But the problem is that but even if they actually achieve something high, it is still a problem because this website still doesn't offer many languages offered to, like Tagalog, Bisaya, and many more other dialects, which can be a problem because they may not know how to be information literate, right? But on the other side, they have these projects where they have dictionary for the media literacy terms. They have Media X, which we can see how media portrays women, indigenous people, and many more. They also have infographics. So I suggest you guys also check our our information literacy resources too. Now, how accessible are Philippines information literacy resources? Now, for our internet access, a proprietary analysis by Kipios 2025 found that we have like 91 million internet users, which is equivalent to 81.9% of the population on October 2025, which we can see that we have a high connectivity to internet, right? But on the flip side, we have digital literacy skills. A study by Philippine Institute of Development Studies found that 1 out of 6, I think it was 1 out of 6 Filipino citizens have only encompasses one of the 6 ICT skills needed, which can show that even though we have high internet access, we lack the actual skills to actually be able to use it, right? So we need much more training. And so this shows that our country is not really our country is rich, but it shows that we must vote for the right government that will actually support its citizens to be able to advance more its digital infrastructure. And I want this presentation for you guys to inspire you to actually vote correctly. And that is for my report. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. Thank you.
So, okay, before anything else, let's have a quick recap about what young Sir Gabriel told us about the information literacy. So, again, information literacy is the ability to find, evaluate, and use information effectively. It helps us solve problems and make informed decisions. While it is often associated in the libraries, its true value lies in how it functions as a survival skill, where it helps people make smart and safe decisions in everyday life, especially in a world full of fake news and online information. So, information literacy is not only limited to the libraries, but it is useful in all areas of life, like education. In academic setting, information literacy is the difference between finding a source and finding a credible source, where it involves critical thinking. It distinguishes between peer-reviewed research and opinion pieces, ethical use, understanding how to cite sources and avoid plagiarism. And next, at work. Employers value information literacy because it directly impacts the bottom line and decision making. It manifests as problem solving, where knowing exactly where to look for technical documentation or market trends. Efficiency. It filters out noise and irrelevant data to find the specific answer needed for a project. And communication, presenting data backed arguments rather than relying on gut feelings or outdated information. And lastly, in everyday situation. This perhaps be the most critical area where we use information literacy to manage our personal lives and safety. We have to be health literate, where we evaluate medical advices found online or understanding the fine print on a prescription. And also, we have to be financially literate. We compare rate interest rates and identify too good to be true scams or researching a major purchase like a car or a house, maybe. Now let us move on to the historical emergence of information literacy. So, information literacy is the concept that became widely known for about 45 to 50 years ago. This term was first used by Paul G. Zorkowski. He was the president of the Information Industry Association. So, this helped people improve their skills in searching, organizing, using, and communicating information. However, even before the term existed, librarians had already been teaching the skills for a long time, where they practice information literacy for over a century. In the past, libraries help people learn how to search for books and information through activities like library instruction, and this was often called the user education. It is a structured, intentional, and systematic program designed to teach users how to identify information needs, search effectively, and use information wisely. In the 1980s, computers and electronic databases changed how we stored and access information. It be yeah. So organizations began managing information as a resource, a tool that you can use to help you understand situation. means that information is treated as something valuable that can be used to achieve goals like money, time, or even materials. And that is why professionals with the ability to efficiently organize and manage information were in greater demand. So this increased the demand for the information professionals like librarians. They are the one who help people find and use existing information. Next, archivists. They preserve and organize historical or official information. And lastly, information brokers. They are the ones who collect and provide specialized information for specific purposes, often for profit. And because of the development of our society, scholars like Daniel Bell, an American sociologist, writer, editor, and a professor at Harvard University that is best known for his contribution to the study of post-industrialism, talked about how society was changing from an agricultural society, a society where most people work in farming and grow food to live, to industrial society, a society where many people work in factories and use machines to produce goods, to finally information society, a society where people mainly use technology, computers, and internet to share and work with information. So at first, many people believe that information cannot be managed or controlled because it seemed too complex and abstract. Because of this belief, the idea of information literacy spread slowly. The more information was available, the irrelevant or unreliable content created challenges. And later, the growth of computers caused a huge increase of information, which led to an information explosion. So information explosion is the rapid increase of information being created and shared through books, medias, and the internet. It makes information easier to access but harder to manage. The role of information professionals, like I said earlier, the librarians and archivists, became more important, and many new jobs appeared, such as information brokers, who help people find and manage information. So now, in the 21st century, the internet, this, the internet, search engines like Google, and the online databases and the mobile devices made information available almost everywhere, where people can now access to text, videos, images, and music anytime and anywhere while using their devices, mobile devices. And because there is so much information today, it is very important for people to learn information literacy. This helps us choose reliable information, use it wisely, and avoid misinformation. That is all. Thank you.
Okay, so imagine you are in pain, you are scared, and you are alone. And the only tool you have to find for help is your phone in your pocket. But when you type your plea for help, the most powerful search engine looks back at you and says, I don't understand. For millions of people in indigenous communities, this isn't a what if. It is the daily reality. Today, we explore the English and Multilingual Challenge through the lens of a member of a Manubo tribe. So, meet our subject. He is a member of a Manubo tribe, carrying centuries of culture, language, and tradition. He represents the multilingual person, someone whose primary language is not English, but who must navigate a digital world built almost entirely in English. Now, our Manuran feels very unwell right now. He thinks, masakit utaw is adgaraman ko hangkay, buwa is adpaka, tambar ta adgaraman ko guntaan. Which means is, sakit na kay kong gibati karon, unsa kay tambalan niya akong mga balatian. So in a moment of crisis, we all turn to our native tongue. So naturally, he goes to Google to search for information. He is attempting to use information literacy to solve the real world problem. He is exactly doing what we are taught to do. Search for answers. Now look closely at his search bar right here. He types, hangkay is tambal, tasakat tagatak way bughat. Which means is, what is the medicine for stomach pain and chills? Now, but look at the English suggestion Google gives him. Budget in finance, budget in economics, because from the word bughat or chills, it looks like the English word budget. So the system ignores his medical advice and gives him a medical emergency rather, and gives him a business advice instead. That is a first major barrier. So when he hits search, the results are even worse. Instead of getting a medical guide, he gets a Facebook post about customers in the marketplace. So the information is technically online, but for him, it is invisible and useless. Now look at his face right here. This is the face of digital exclusion. Yes, he has the device, he has the internet to search, and he has the literacy. But because the content doesn't speak his language, he is still left in the dark. Now this brings us to the bigger picture. Why information literacy is important globally? Well, information is power. If you can find or understand information, you can't make decisions about your health, your rights, or even your future. Now, I have here 4 pillars. And we will talk about misinformation, empowerment, development, and safety. So first, let's talk about combating misinformation. So instead of giving you some images about false news as an example, I will show you the symbols instead. So I have here false news. So false news is like a trickster. It hides behind convincing appearances, mixes truth with lies, and fools people into believing what is real. Second is bias messages. So this shows bias messages using filter or lens. It represents how only selected information is shown while other details are hidden. Because of this, people only see one side of the story, which can lead to misunderstanding. That's why it's important to check different sources before believing information. Next is wrong information online. This shows wrong information online. Where false or inaccurate content spreads on the internet, it can look real, but is actually misleading or not true. This can confuse people and can affect their understanding. So, it's important to always verify information from trusted sources before believing or sharing it. Now, here, so this happens because of the language barriers and the lack of local context. If the facts are only in English, people will trust the fake news over their native, like the fake news written in the native languages. So in many rural areas, verified fact-checked information are only exist in English or in Tagalog. If a Manobo speaker can find the truth in their own native language, they are forced to rely on whatever is available, which can lead to unverified copy paste news from social media. Now, people don't just believe information because it comes from online. They believe it because it comes from someone they knew. If an official sources feels very foreign or outside their culture, they will naturally trust a local rumor over that English fact. So to fight this misinformation, we must provide facts that speaks through their native languages and through the voices that these communities actually trust. So moving on to our second pillar, which is empowering citizens. So true empowerment isn't just about giving someone a smartphone, but it's about giving them a skills to use it wisely. This means developing critical thinking, so they don't just accept everything as a fact. Information literacy allows a person to evaluate source credibility and identify bias. They learn to ask, is this news accurate? Is it trying to manipulate me? Now, when citizens can distinguish truth from lies, we create an informed society where people make better choices for their health, their families, or their country. So, how do we prevent people from being misled? So, I have here four strategies on how these can help. So, first is use local language. We must share verified information in their native languages like Cebuano, Ilocano, or Manubo. When information is in person's mother tongue, it is more relatable and easier to understand for them. Second is promote media literacy. We need to teach each and every one of us a simple habit. Check the source first and verify the facts before hitting the share button. Third is partner with community leaders. People trust familiar voices. By working with teachers, local officials, and local influencers, we ensure the truth comes from the source that the community already respects. Lastly is encourage responsible sharing. We must remind every citizen to think before you click or think before you share. If you haven't verified it, don't spread it. Remember, guys, that responsibility starts with the individual user. So think about our lives as a student. We often feel tambak na mga gawain, or we have a mountain of tasks, assignments, and requirements. It's overwhelming, right? Now, imagine our Manubo friend. He doesn't just have a mountain of work. He has the mountain of information hitting him at all once. And most of it is in the language he doesn't understand, he doesn't speak. So here comes empowering citizens. It's like giving him a shovel to clear that mountain by teaching him critical thinking and providing information into his native language. We help him manage the tambak of data so he can find exactly what he needs to survive. So, moving on to our third pillar, which is driving development. So take a look at this face. I have here an example of a Manubo graduate. So this Manubo graduate isn't just about a success story, but she is the living embodiment of growth and progress. We often talk about development as a buzzword, but look closely. Development happens when a community stops guessing and starts knowing. So, when we move from being digitally excluded, hidden from the world, to becoming leaders of our own narrative, the entire game changes. Ask yourselves, what happens to a community when they no longer have to wait for the answers? They can find them themselves. Now, notice her graduation cap and the book of her hand. Simple symbols, right? Now, but for her, they are academic benefits. Now, have you seen here? Sorry for that. So that represents academic benefits won through battle. Now, she didn't just get the degree. She mastered information literacy. In a world full of noises, she developed stronger critical thinking, and she didn't just survive in a diverse classroom. She thrived more to learn independently. That book on her hands represents not just a paper, but it's her foundation. How much more could our youth achieve if we gave them the right tools to think of themselves, right? Now, finally, look at the briefcase on the other hand of her. So this represents more than a jobs. It represents freedom. So what is freedom first? So freedom is a power to choose on our own path in life. It means being able to think, speak, and act without no fear, as long as we respect others. Freedom is not just about whatever we want, what we want to do, but it comes with responsibility. When we use our freedom wisely, we grow as an individual and help create a better society. So, she is no longer tied up to one village. Oops, sorry. She is no longer tied up to one village. She is not. She can work across regions. She can adopt to any workplaces in the planet. By accessing knowledge, she isn't just climbing a career ladder. She is lifting her entire tribe up with her. Now, some people think being prepared is a burden, but look at this briefcase on her hand. So it's the exact opposite of being tambak. It is the physical sign of being ready for anything. Next, our final pillar is safe digital navigation. And let's be honest, success is meaningless if we if we can't protect it. The digital world is a frontier. To survive it, we need an ethical compass and a secure online presence. No? In 2026, this means being smart about. It's not about being smart, but it's about how you use it wisely. About responsible AI. So it's about knowing how to use the powerful tools without letting them spread bias and lies. So are we are we using technology to build our future, or are we letting it dismantle our truth? So that's the question. Now, moving on, to stop this digital harm, we have to start with ourselves. Respectful, sorry for that. Respectful communication starts for it's our first line of defense. So we must teach our communities that the internet should be the bridge for our connection, for our communication. So, not a weapon for harassment. No cyberbullying, no trolling. We need to ask ourselves and to everyone, do our online words reflect the dignity of our ancestors, or are we lost in the noise? Now, we must use technology safely. So, for example, for someone from a remote tribe using the internet for the first time, a single scam isn't just an inconvenience. It can be and it can lead to financial ruin. It can destroy years of hard work in just one click, single click. Now, awareness of scams and malware isn't just about a tech talk. It is it is the shield that allows our development to continue without fear. We've built the house. Now let's make sure that the door is locked. So moving on. So I have here two countries represents here Australia as a developed countries to more access, and Philippines is developing countries to limited access. So first, let's talk about Australia first. So let's look at Australia. On the surface, it's a digital paradise. High speed fiber, 5G in the palms of their hands, and internet penetration that reaches almost every corner of the continent. But if we look closer, the numbers tell a different story. Despite all the wealth and technology, 2.8 million Australians are still digitally excluded. Think about that. In a country that has it all, millions are still cut off. In the vast rural outback, the signal is as weak as it is in our remote mountains. Now, it makes us realize that availability is not the same as accessibility. You can you can have the fastest internet in the world. But if a community is too remote or too poor to use it, that technology might as well not exist. And also, to add this, why this remote something like to us like a manobo and their examples in their Australians people, it's like about kon manggod siya kanang mas gina-preserve nila ang ilahang culture over that. That's why dili jud sila like not into internet sila, so like gaka kuan jud sila like gaka wala gali bitaw sila because they preserve more their culture over today nga mas more have access to internet na, something like that. So, where are we now? So let's move to their education system. Now, look at their schools. In Australia, ICT and digital literacy aren't just subjects. They are survival skills taught from the primary schools. So every student is trained to research, to verify, and to create. Now, but even in the advanced system, there is a digital divide. A student in a wealthy city school has a different future than a student in a low income or remote indigenous community who lacks a present device or a stable connection. And that is a difference. This forces us to ask that is education truly the great equalizer? If the tools to access is an is it is an unequal, right? So even in a land of opportunity, digital poverty is still holding the bright minds back. Now, moving on to their government support. So finally, look at how their government works. Australia is a leader of digital government. They've moved almost everything: healthcare, taxes, social services, to online only platforms. It's fast, it's modern, and it's efficient. But there's a but. There is a catch. For those with low literacy and to elderly who didn't grow up with a smartphone, this efficiency is actually a barrier for them. When a government goes online only, it's unintentionally shuts the door on the people who need help more, right? So it's a powerful lesson for us that when we build digital systems, are we building bridges for everyone, or are we accidentally building walls that only the tech savvy can climb? So, right now, okay, let's look to our home. So, we are known as a social media capital of the world with 98 million with 98 million internet, like who use internet, right? Now, in 2026, our digital presence is exploding. We don't just use the internet, we live it in, like the Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. But here is the irony. We are some of the most active users in the world, yet we pay some of the highest prices. For some of the most inconvenient speeds. In the city, we're streaming in HD. But in the province, a student has to climb a hill just to get a bar of the signal to send an assignment. So, why is it that in 2026, a Filipino dream of success still depends on their signal strength? We have the possible to connect, but do we have the infrastructure that respects our time and our hard earned money? Now, let's look. Okay, wait. Now let's look at the education system. In our schools, the pandemic changed everything. DepEd pushed for ICT integration, and today students are more tech aware than ever. We use the phones for research and group chats for collaborations. We are mobile first generations, as they say. But using a phone, yeah, but using a phone is not the same as digital mastery. Many of our students are experts at scrolling, but they are vulnerable to fake news and manipulated media. So we have to look, we have the tools, yes, we have the tools, but do we have the training? Many schools still lack the actual laptops and stable connections about the related they lack of the internet. So that's it. So if a student can navigate TikTok but can't tell the difference between a verified source or a deep fake, are they really digitally literate? We aren't just facing a lack of gadgets here. We are facing a crisis of critical thinking. Now let's look to our government support. Yeah, government support. So, our government is pushing hard with the DICT leading to the way. We see the rises of e-governance and the eGov at the eGov app. So the goal is a one digital government where you don't have to wait for hours. Um, it's beautiful vision, but in reality, the digital trust transformation is moving at two different speeds. In Metro Manila, it's fast. In the provinces, it's cruel. For many Filipino, especially to the elderly or those who never finished school, these online portals feels like a foreign language. Now, as we move everything to the cloud, are we accidentally leaving the leaving the offline Filipino behind? Real digital transformation isn't just about the app. It's about making sure that the person in the most remote barangay feels served, not to be ignored. Now, so we've seen Australia as a country, right? Now we've seen Australia as a country with the money but still struggling in the gap. And we've seen Philippines as a country with a heart but struggling with the system. So the question isn't just about which country is better. The question is, how do we make sure that the both worlds technology serves the human and not the other way around? And that's the question. And that ends my presentation. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Worldwide Multilingual Information Literacy Research Project. This project consists of three parts. The first part being the language problem, the second part is how to overcome the problem, and lastly, disclaimer, and future plans. This last part is very important because it talks about what to do in the future and avoid confusion. Well then, let us proceed to the first part, that being the language problem. The reason why we need to talk about the language problem is because in order to solve a problem, you need to identify a problem. So the first part is all about. Well, if the ILR is an unfamiliar language, the first thing you're gonna encounter is language barrier, and the second part is the misunderstanding of important information, and thirdly, limited access to ILR. I'm gonna show you an example to demonstrate what these are, to clearly define it. And here we have an example. Soldier number 1 said, hey, before we do that, we need some context. Fun fact, soldiers called the mortar round as Tootsie Roll. Well, soldier number 1 said, we request a 50 rounds of Tootsie Roll. Soldier 2, Tootsie Roll? Okay, it will be there in 3 days. 3 days later. What the hell? Not an actual Tootsie Roll. I meant a mortar round. Oops. From what you can see from this example, those example represents the 3, but I want you to identify what those 3 are. The first being language barrier, secondly, misunderstanding of important information, and thirdly, limited access to IR. So what is it? Well, the language barrier is the code name. The code name being the Tootsie Roll of the mortar. I mean the code name of the mortar, which is Tootsie Roll. The second part is misunderstanding of important information, is the meaning of the code name Tootsie Roll. And lastly, which person has limited access to ILR? Can you guess? Well, you're correct. It's soldier number 2, not knowing the code name of the mortar. Well, here I'm gonna second example of a language bar. A second part of a language barrier is not having access on ILR. When you don't have an access on ILR, it creates an unsafe online. An example of this is this guy thought he won money. Hala, nanalo ako. But little did he know, it's a scam. So this guy does not know digital literacy because he does not know that this right here is a scam. See? The website says it's gonna give credit information, even though the person in charge of the website is gonna steal the data. Well, the second example of not having access to ILR is false or misleading information. Here, this person, this girl right here thought, this girl thought that this one right here is real, na no, walang pasok. But little did she know that this right here is not an official website. Hence the false or misleading information. So that's why you're not sure though. It could be right or wrong because it's not official. And lastly, the third example is it creates an inequality. Here, student number 1 has access to ILR, the book. And student number 2 does not have access to ILR, the book. So the student number 1 knows the answer because he has access to ILR, the book. So he knows the answer. 2 times 3 equals 6. But the student number 2 does not know the answer because he does not ILR. But what would happen if I were to mix it up? Well, this would happen. The student number 2 knows the answer, but the student number 1 does not know the answer. The reason why being is that the one who holds the ILR knows, because ILR contains knowledge. Well, that's the two parts of the language problem. We're gonna proceed to collaboration and overcoming the problem. Well, this is very important because collaboration means kanang expand the ILR project and also overcome the problem from the many language or indigenous language peoples. Here, collaboration overcoming the problem. From what you can see from this picture, indigenous people, these people have a rough time. They don't have ILR, so like they don't know what to do. So even if they have access, to phones and such as that, their indigenous language can't be detected by the Google, because Google favors the major language, that being the Chinese, English, but not the indigenous language, which is the minor language. From the previous example of Khyshane, this right here, this person, even though he have access from the internet, he still can access the information from it. So, the second part is encouraging translation to indigenous people. If you were to encourage translation to indigenous language, then the indigenous people will have an equal access to information, better understanding, and less misunderstanding. This right here are two types of materials. I'm gonna show you why this is important, because if we were to talk about these two materials, we're gonna know what is useful and just for entertainment purpose only. Here, the pragmatic materials are practical and useful in real life, helping people apply information. From what you can see from these non-technical materials, it is simple and not using complex or special terms, and ordinary people can understand them easily. The pragmatic materials are instructions or manuals, recipes, maps, and schedules. From the non-technical materials, we have magazine, blog post, news article, general books, stories, and essays, such as that. Well, now that we know the type of materials, we're gonna discuss why this is very important, this third part. Although the list is useful, it still has some problems or limitations. It may be missing some things or may not be completely accurate. The reason why this disclaimer is here because it avoids confusion to people. Here, disclaimers. Some indigenous language are not included in the resource or list. The reason why I put this here because some people might confuse that this project has already translated all indigenous language. So that's why I put this disclaimer to tell them that not all indigenous languages are translated. Future plans. Right now, currently, this project includes over 40 languages with a plan for a continuous ILR uploads in the future. These right here are the list of the countries: Albanian, Amharic, Arabic, Bangla, blah blah blah, Vietnamese, English. So yeah, that is all. Thank you. Before we end, I want you to have a quick recap. I want you to tell me what are the difference between pragmatic and non-technical materials. Anyone? And secondly, what are the 3 parts of the worldwide multilingual information literacy resource project? Can anyone tell me? Alright, the first one being language problem, correct? But I want you to tell me 2 more. Well, that's gonna be in your assignment. Well, that is all. Thank you very much. And now, we're gonna proceed to Asiya, the next presenter.
So good day everyone. So the topic for our reporting today is overview of information literacy resources worldwide, and I will be specifically tackling on chapter 4, which is the individual language list contributions. Now, as Gabriel has already previously said, information literacy, or IL, refers to the ability to find, evaluate, and use information effectively. Information literacy is important because people everywhere rely on information to study, work, and make important decisions. But the thing is, information literacy cannot be fully accessible if it only exists in one language. And that is why this project aims to gather information literacy resources from many different languages around the world. So, let's talk about the nature of the individual language list. So the first thing that you need to know is that the project organizes information literacy resources by their language. So this means that resources are grouped according to the language that they are written in and not by nation where they were published. Now this makes sense because languages extend far beyond borders. So let's take a look at this map right here. So this map is actually color-coded into what language every country speaks. And I'm sure you can already tell that some countries share or have the same color because they share the same language. And that's exactly why information literacy resources are grouped according to the language they are written in and not by the nation, because doing this can help users find materials that they can read and understand regardless of their nationality. Now, the second thing is resources are selected by contributors. So the lists do not claim to be complete or perfect. So they contain resources chosen by contributors because the contributors believe that those materials are important or useful. So the goal is to collect what is accessible and meaningful, and not only what is formally academic. So now, the third point is translation issues. So some information literacy materials may have existed in multiple languages, but over time those translations can disappear, become outdated, or may no longer even be accessible online. Yes. May no longer be accessible online or from the original source. Now, another problem with this is translation accuracy. Some information literacy terms don't always translate directly into other languages, and certain concepts may not exist in the same way in different culture. So, for example, have you ever gone onto Facebook scrolling and maybe trying to keep up with the lives of your friends and just trying to keep up with our society? So if you've ever done that, then I'm sure you may have come across posts, those relatable posts that are like only text. Now the thing about those posts is that they are actually automatically translated by the Facebook app. So here's one that I came across pretty long ago. So this text was automatically translated into English just so that they can reach a much more wider people. And the original poster's post was translated to, "When we're completely inside, the report will be far." And the sentence of this structure is extremely confusing. It doesn't make sense at all. Like, what do you mean you're completely inside? What report is for? So of course, curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to translate it and turn it into to what the original post was supposed to say. And if we take a look here, the original post actually meant, "Kung kailan buo na ang loob natin, malayo na yung taho." So as you can tell, the meaning of the message is completely different from what the translated version is. Now this is because the Facebook translation feature translates sentences basically like word for word. So sometimes some words in the Filipino language don't translate directly into English, which causes some major confusion. Now, this language gap makes it harder for non-English speakers to access proper information literacy materials, which is why the project aims to preserve resources in their original languages. Now, let's move on to the next topic. So let's talk about the human work behind information literacy language list. So the contributors. So each list is prepared by a native speaker or expert in that language. But however, one contributor cannot represent every country that speaks the same language. So let's say, for example, French information literacy materials from France may be different from those in Canada or Senegal. Now this is because, like I said before, the French in France has some words that are quite different in Canada, which may cause confusion to other French-speaking people. So let's move on to the next. Now, these lists need constant updating because information literacy resources change. Yes, so these lists are basically living documents. They need continuous updates. Information literacy constantly evolves, new digital tools appear, and websites come and go. Now, because the contributors are volunteers, it can be difficult to maintain complete updated lists. Now, one way to solve this challenge is to allow more contributors to collaborate. Something like maybe a wiki. Now the next thing is, let's talk about the long-term goal of these lists. So the goal is to build a complete, accessible, and constantly updated multilingual database of information literacy resources in many languages. So this system would make it easier for educators, communities, and students worldwide to learn information literacy in their native language. So, how do we propose? How do we propose to reach this big goal? So, to help reach this goal, the project proposes the use of a wiki system. So I'm sure we're all familiar with the website Wikipedia, which gets a bad rep for its unreliability. But this wiki system would perform somewhat similar to Wikipedia, where it would only allow approved contributors to post on this system. So the reason why a wiki system is even being considered is because a wiki allows multiple people to edit, update, and add resources at any point. It reduces the burden on a single contributor and helps ensure that the list stay as current as possible. Now, at the moment, there is no finalized official wiki for the project, but the idea is being thoroughly considered because of its flexibility and collaborative nature. Now moving on, let's talk about the timeline and progresses. So the first contributions to the language list were submitted between March and August 2012. Now this period is so important because it marks the beginning of the global effort to collect information literacy resources in multiple languages. Now, future additions are being considered. So like I said, these lists are not complete yet. So future additions include expanding to more languages, updating existing resources, and adding new materials like videos or online courses. And of course, they are encouraging more contributors to join the project. Now, let's see. So, if this project only aims to make sure that other languages don't or can have easier access to information literacy materials, why does English still remain as part of the information literacy resource project? Now, although the project aims to support all world languages, English is still included in the database, and this is because English is the official language in many small countries and is often used in academic and government settings. So including English only ensures that no region is excluded and that the system reflects global reality. I missed a few. Okay. So now let's talk about the importance of a multilingual information literacy resource system. So basically, a multilingual information literacy resource system is so important because it helps close the language gap. Whoa, forgot that. Millions of people cannot access information literacy materials simply because they are not available in their language. Now, by gathering resources from around the world, this project makes information literacy more inclusive and more accessible to everyone, no matter what language they speak. And that is all for my report. Thank you for listening.